This week in Retronauts, you're possibly being recorded live for posterity. If you're not being recorded live for posterity, congratulations. You're the only ones who will ever witness this episode of Retronauts. Retronauts Live Episode 4, I guess is what we're going to call it.
Unless it doesn't record.
In which case, it's the missing episode.
Or it can be lost forever like Leisure Suit Larry 4.
Exactly.
You can pass it down as oral history.
So hi, everyone. Thanks for coming to the fourth live Retronauts panel. Last time I was before all of you, we were talking about how we were shutting down the podcast, and now we're back in front of you, and the podcast actually isn't shut down, and we're like doing new stuff, and yeah, so I've got egg in my face, but I don't think people mind, do they? Okay, just checking.
Someone said yes.
Yeah. You may leave.
I heard a couple of guesses.
I'm sorry for those of you who take offense to my dishonesty.
Your continued existence.
So, what?
What?
No. So this week, I don't know, half year, this episode,
it's
this
PAX in Retronauts.
panel, we're talking about Retronauts versus 16 bits, which sounded like a really clever placeholder when I wrote it down a few months ago, and then when it came time to put the panel together, I realized, what does that actually mean? So these guys have some ideas about what it means, but first, why don't we introduce these guys? Hi, I'm Jeremy Parish, as usual. You?
Hello, I'm Chris Kohler, also as usual. Thank you, people who catcalled. My room number is...
the usual as of late, I guess.
Yeah!
And I'm Kurt Kalata, not at all usual.
I definitely got the best scream.
You did.
Yeah.
I'm kind of jealous. So, 16 bits. What is 16 bits? Guys?
Are you looking at me?
Yes, I'm looking at you.
Well, the Mattel Intellivision.
Exactly, yes. The very first 16-bit system was the Mattel Intellivision, but that's
so
what
we're going to talk
about
that for an hour. Astro Smash is going to be the first game we talk about. We're going to devote 20 minutes to that, and then we're going to break for coffee, and then Microsurgeon, and then we're done. So I hope
then I'm going to talk about my E-Tank coffee cup, available from the guys at Fangamer, down in the... That's right.
Apparently we're doing the plug section now. Why don't we get all that out of the way right up front?
This is ceramic. It's really nice. I'm going to pretend to drink out of it. I was on a morning show once. And did you ever like morning shows like with the two hosts and we talked about the video games that were coming out that year, and you know how they have the coffee cup sitting on the table? There's no coffee in it.
What?
Just a prop.
Wow. So there's another plug to get out of the way. I'll do this before and after the show. I came to realize the classic console room, which is on the other side of this floor, is open until 2 a.m. So at least some of us are going to be there starting at 10 if you guys want to just come hang out and play old games. 10 p.m. tonight. I will remind you guys again at the conclusion of this panel.
Also, if you like this, you should go to the Radio Free Nintendo panel, which is at 10:30, I think, tomorrow morning. And then tomorrow you should come to my panel, which is collecting old video games, and are your old video games actually buried treasure? And I think that's
16-bit.
In the meantime, maybe we should actually do this panel.
I know. I'm trying.
That's why people are here.
Trying to get all the shameless plugs out of the way fast.
Right. So yeah, the 16-bit era is kind of a nebulous section of video gaming history, and it's technically about technology because the 16-bit processors that powered most of the machines in the late 80s, early 90s ran on offered 16-bit power, which means what the hell does that mean?
It means nothing at all.
It has to do with the processing power and the processor bandwidth of those machines. Whatever, that's all kind of technical. But there's a certain aesthetic about 16-bit games that you still see in some portable games, Game Boy Advance, DS, maybe even some 3DS games down the line. But for the most part, it was kind of condensed into that one period between the NES's dominance and the point where the PlayStation came in and said, look, 3D, polygons, they're great.
So we whittled it down to 4 systems, right?
Right.
So there's the SNK Neo Geo, the TurboGrafx 16, also known as PC Engine. I agree with that. The Sega Genesis and the Super Nintendo.
I forgot about my favorite part of PAX East, which is you just say a random name of a product and people applaud.
I don't know. I said Mike.
What? No, we say the product and then you.
I said Microsurgeon and no one said a thing.
Awesome Possum kicks Dr. Machino's butt. Yeah.
Was it a boo for Awesome Possum?
That was kind of the crowning pinnacle of 16-bit.
Yeah, the mascot
show over.
Yeah. But, should we start with the
We should start with the race to mascots.
The race to mascots. Let's not.
What, really? Russia and the United States were in a heated race.
Such an integral part of the... Okay.
That was not an integral part. That was an unfortunate... It was like, when you get the cold, you get mucus. I'm recovering from a cold, so this is fresh in my mind and my skull.
That's
actually.
Where your metaphors go to immediately. Like what's?
I've been sick recently.
My nose is full of snot. This is gonna be a metaphor.
The mascots were not the objective of the 16-bit era. They were just kind of a side effect of marketing, and I don't know.
So before the 16-bit era, the market was dominated by the Nintendo Entertainment System, both in the U.S. and abroad, I'd say, unless you count computers, which I don't. And
he says that not as an anti-PC snob. Frank likes computers.
I like computers.
He mostly played computers.
I just didn't have one.
They're also not really consoles.
Right. But the Nintendo's Famicom came out in, July 1983. So there's this big-ass gap in console gaming that brought about new technology, which led into what we consider the first 16-bit system, which is the PC Engine, which came out, I believe, 1987.
October 30th, 1987 in Japan.
And I had one. I think I'm
the
only one.
You had a PC Engine?
No, sorry. I had a TurboGrafx 16, which was the American. Did anyone here have a TurboGrafx when it was alive?
How did you find
when you were
one
kids?
Guy. Two guys. Yeah.
How did you even know about the TurboGrafx 16? The TurboGrafx was a nice system, but it had a really, really serious weakness, which is that it was made by NEC. NEC was the TurboGrafx's weakness. In the U.S., the TurboGrafx didn't actually launch until about 2 weeks after the Sega Genesis came out. It had a head start of at least a year on the Genesis, the Mega Drive in Japan. So it actually kind of, built some headway there. But here, it was instantly outmatched. It was, I wouldn't say obsolete, but it was overmatched from the moment it first came out. And, Sega came on strong with great marketing and strong marketing, loud marketing. And
it did very well.
Johnny Turbo,
right? I mean, the PC Engine did very well in Japan. It came out and it was a pretty strong competitor for having that head start.
I think what's significant about the PC Engine, if you look back to publications of the day, when that first started coming around in '87, '88, when we got import coverage of it, it's like it looked like arcade games. You didn't really get that from the Nintendo at the time. You did when the Nintendo launched, but at the time, the arcades were far ahead of the NES. But the TurboGrafx was the first time that you just looked at screenshots and it was like, that looks exactly like R-Type, The
TurboGrafx is kind of a fun, or at least interesting, bridge piece of technology because technically it's basically a Nintendo NES on steroids. It runs on a variant of the NES's processor. It's an 8-bit system, but we call it 16 bits because it had a 16-bit in the name in the U.S., and it had a 16-bit graphics processor. But, I mean...
it just looks 16-bit.
Yeah, if you put the NES next to the TurboGrafx, there's no comparison. The TurboGrafx looks great.
Indeed.
Yes.
Kurt, would you like to add anything here?
I think the big thing... Well, I guess I can't really say too much about it. It had arcade-quality graphics, but... at the time, R-Type was a game that I never really played, and the Sega, they actually had names to it, but I guess we could talk about the Sega.
I'm going to try the name thing again. Keith Courage. Yeah.
It's just that one guy right there. It's like, I had that game.
Did you actually enjoy it, though? When you played it, did you say, I am so proud to own this game?
Half hour. Oh, come on.
What was your big TurboGrafx game? What was your favorite?
Military Madness.
Yeah.
That's one of those that they keep remaking.
Bonk's
That's how good it
Adventure,
was.
indeed. Air Zonk.
Legendary Axe.
Legendary Axe was bad.
Air Zonk?
Air Zonk was good.
You have expensive taste.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
not
yeah,
if
the
you bought it at the
TurboGrafx was
time.
sort of first out of the gate, but like you said, the Sega was coming right up behind them with the Mega Drive, which we know is the Genesis here in the United States. And I had one of them, too, turns out.
A Genesis?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I sold my Game Boy, got me a Genesis and Sonic.
Really?
Yeah, I did.
Before we shift gears entirely to Sega, I think it's interesting that, listening to the people, to the games that people out there, remember and loved from the TurboGrafx era, most of those are games that have actually are more familiar to people now for their remakes. It's like the really strong games from the TurboGrafx era tend to be the ones that are revisited, like the Bonks, the Military Madnesses, the Bomberman, the Dracula X's.
When you talk about companies that, because there's a lot of companies out there that are sitting on all of these old franchises, and fans want them to revitalize them, and Hudson is not one of those kind of like Hudson, in the sense that Hudson absolutely makes hay as much as it possibly can with all of its old franchises.
Who
is there? Yeah, oh right, they're dead now, aren't
Hudson
they?
died.
Sorry,
the U.S. arm of the company.
That's true.
They're now owned by Konami, so it's kind of like being dead.
It is.
But Konami's pretty good about retro releases also, actually,
Sometimes.
and bringing back franchises.
Yeah, true.
There's a new Rocket Knight. I don't know why,
There's a new
but there's a new
Hardcore.
Rocket Knight. And there's a new Hardcore. That's true.
Yeah.